Hey, this is Rich over at TVP Live with another quick tips tutorials brought to you by Photoshop Elements Custom Tutorials Group. And let's jump right into today's poster. Wanted to know how to make a reflection off this girl's team here. And the first thing to know before I show you how to create a reflection on this team here is that your original photo needed a little bit of help. When I brought down the brightness and increased the contrast, I saw a lot of little lines and other colors and stuff. It was very, very dirty, the white part. So I painstakingly recreated that by drawing out throughout each person in white. And then I was able to use the magic tool and cut them all out, basically creating their own layers. So now I can turn off the background layer and I have a full layer of just the girls. This is what you really want when you're creating reflections. It's really necessary to take them out and off from the background. So now that I have them off of the background, I'll turn the background back on, but I'm going to lock the background here. And now I can still move the girls all at once. And also another thing you had was this picture was really like sideways like this. And you don't want that. You really, really want to straighten it up. How I did that was I went to View, Grid, and then I took the girls and then I turned this so that all their feet were kind of matching like that. See that? So once they're matching, then you have a better chance of being able to create a believable reflection. So I'm going to turn off the grid. So the first thing you want to do when you're creating a reflection is I'm going to bring the girls up a little bit higher so that the reflection can take more space down here. Then I want to copy them. I can do that either by holding down the Alt key and then left mouse clicking and you just drag a new copy. It's that easy. Or I can just come up here, right click and hit duplicate layer. And it'll create a new layer. Now we got our second layer. I'm going to go ahead and take that first layer and lock it. Come back to the second layer, the top layer. So see if I try to grab the bottom layer, it doesn't allow me to because they're locked along with the background. So I'm going to take that top layer and first we want to turn it upside down and reverse it. How do you do that? You come up here to Image, Rotate, vertically. So flip layer vertically. If you choose this up here, it's going to do the whole picture. I just want that single layer flipped. So once I click that, it's going to flip it vertically. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that when I bring these down here, I can see what I'm working with. And next I want to position the feet as close as possible, but there's a problem here is this new layer is on top of the other layer. We want that behind it. So I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to pull it down in between the background white and the top layer. And now it's behind. You see, it's behind them. I'm going to position this as close as possible. And you see it's still a little bit off. But there's another perspective issue, is it's the wrong perspective. If there was really a reflection, it wouldn't be this perspective of straight up and down. In order to fix that, I got to go up here to Image, Transform, and Perspective. This perspective allows me to take one of the corners and pull it out and look at the opposite corner. It's pulling out too, so I can bring them closer together or push them out. Now realistically, if this was a reflection, it would be going out like this and bowing towards the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and do it, and you can see it looks like it's more like laying down on a floor. And once I got that where I want it, I'm going to let go, and then I'm just going to hit OK. And now you can see it really looks like it's on the floor because it's flattened and it's stretched on the edges. Now I'm going to bring it in to squeeze a little bit because that's how it realistically should look. Squeezed like that. If we were standing back behind and watching a reflection, it would look squeezed like that a bit. So now I'm going to hit OK, and now we're really getting to where we want to be. I'm going to try to match it up a little bit. You can see the feet over here are not touching, but they are over here. So I'm going to turn the whole thing just a tiny bit. See, I can turn it any way, which way we want. So I'm going to go something right around here, and that's a lot closer. Now the important part of this project is that these feet here are not touching in many different portions. So now what I want to do is cut each one of these out separately so I can move them up so that they're touching each other. So on that layer, I'm going to take the polygon tool and I can use the lasso tool, and I just want to basically cut out, make sure I'm cutting in between here and come on up here. And it doesn't matter if some of this stuff is kind of overlapping. I'm going to come all the way up here, come around, and I will let go, and I'm going to right click and choose cut. Now what that just did is it cut that last piece out. So I can put that anywhere I wanted to if I needed to. So I could just push that over here to the side. Let's go to the next one over. I have to click to choose the whole rest of them. Take the lasso tool and do the same thing here. When I get up here, it's not as important because that's not going to be part of the photo. And I'm going to right click and hit cut. Now I have two, and you see each time it makes its own new layer. So this one is on its own layer, this one is on its own layer, and let's continue doing that with each one. Click on all of them, take the lasso tool, and now the last layer, I still want to do that even though it's the last layer, so I really do want to cut these out, this last one out like this. And I'll right click and hit cut. It's going to leave this empty layer, which I can actually get rid of. I'll right click and delete layer. So now we got all of these separated, and that allows us to put them in properly. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to put the feet right here. I can turn it a little bit like that so they kind of match up. Now this isn't perfect because it's not Photoshop, so some of this here is not going to match, but luckily we do have another tool. If you go over here to Image, Transform, and Warp, if you have, I think PSE 22 and above, it has that warp feature, and that way I can take one of these corners here and just pull that corner down and have those feet kind of touch. I can take these corners and stretch them out so that they're off the edge of the paper. I'm going to hit OK, but you see the feet here still kind of missing in the back. This is where you take the smudge tool. And I'm going to come down here and look how big the smudge tool is. It's at 50 because I enlarged your picture really big. And this way I can take this tennis shoe and smudge it back there a little bit. And now it really touches on all parts. I'll take this part here and just stretch it just a little bit. You don't have to do it too much, just so that it kind of matches up. Now let's go ahead to the next piece and bring her in and pretty much do the same thing. And let's see, turn the angle just a tiny bit, get the tennis shoe pretty darn close like that. Take the smudge tool and I'm going to smudge the shoe, and this is with a soft brush. Smudge it right into there. I can kind of do this, just kind of cheat it a little bit. Nobody will really notice. Okay, let's go to the next one. And then the very last one, this one's a little bit harder because this leg is going to be hard to stretch over here without affecting everything. So let me first get her off the screen like that. And then let's see if the actual warp works. It may not work too well, but actually look at that. It's not too bad. There's a little bit left over here that I can't move one without the other. So I'm going to use the smudge brush again. This might look a little bit strange, and I could maybe just leave it without it, but I'm going to go ahead and just smudge it in and see what happens here. All the girls in position for their feet. All we have to do now is marry all of these together so that we can fade them out and add the white to it. So how do we do that? Let's go ahead and draw a box from off the screen all the way across all these, making sure not to touch anything on the top, all the way across here, and you see that automatically chose all of these layers. I'm going to right click on one of them and I'm going to hit merge layers. That'll turn all of them into one layer, and there we go. All the feet are in the proper place, exactly where we want them. Now in the next step, we're going to make these look a little more realistic, because you know what? If they were a real reflection, it wouldn't be 100% reflection like the top half. So we're going to take the opacity and turn that down to something like 75. See that it's a little bit lighter, and that's exactly how it would look if it was realistic. And next, let's fade that to white. How do we do that? Well, let's add another layer just above this layer. Right here, an empty layer. Let's go ahead and grab a brush. Let's make that brush white by taking the color picker tool, and I'm going to pick it right there. And then I'll go back to the brush. Now that brush is set to 30 pixels right now, and that's pretty small. Let's bring this really big, like 1000%. And now you can see how big that is. I'm going to zoom out of the picture a little bit and come back right around here, and it's going to be white on its own layer. And I'm going to start from over here. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, right click, and just come across once, maybe twice. Boom. And that gave us the fade to white that we were looking for. And if we wanted to adjust that fade, I can grab that corner of that fade and bring that all the way down, or bring that almost all the way off. So it's entirely up to you how much or how little. Now let's say if I wanted more of a gradual fade, what I do is I stretch the fade really far and then take the whole fade and bring it back like this. See that? And it gives us a nice, really, really subtle fade to white. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now all we want to do is add a little bit of drop shadow underneath each foot, and that's going to give us a more realistic that there's a light shining on them. And I'm going to put that layer on the top of the white layer. So I'm going to click here and then choose new layer. I'm going to zoom in. Now I want a color palette of pure black, so I'm going to click on the black here. I'll hit OK. Come back to the brush. Remember, we just used it. It's up at 1000%. Let's bring that back down to 40 pixels. And basically, we want to just draw a little bit of a shadow underneath each foot. And you can see what's happening here. We're adding the drop shadow that would naturally be there. It's too harsh right now, and that's okay because we can lessen that later with the opacity. Move over to the next set. And once we got these drop shadows in where we want them, then we're going to zoom out a little bit, and let's simply take the opacity of those drop shadows. I'm going to toggle it on and off. See that difference? How much more realistic it is with the drop shadow. And take the opacity, and I can play around with this opacity. So I'd say somewhere about 80% looks realistic. I'm going to toggle it on and off. You see that drop shadow looks really nice. And that's pretty much all there is to it. All we got to do now is take the cropping tool and recrop the whole picture. And maybe bring in the crop just a tad like this. From here to here. And I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. That's it for this tutorial. This is Rich, calling it quits, saying over and out.